Good morning, everybody. It's Kathy Haig here at the Magical Urban Vegetable Garden, and I think it's going to be a beautiful day. Leave me a comment when you come in here so I can see who's here. Facebook isn't really good about showing who shows up all the time, and I will try to answer any questions here. So be sure to share this. Today is all about getting more production out of small space gardens, or the space you already have. And there's lots of different ways to do that. So I'm going to share a few different tips that I use in my garden. Some of them are ones that I have friends who have even smaller garden spaces or no garden spaces. And there's lots of different things here. So I'll get started. One of the first things to know is that there are options. It's not like, in our grandparents' day, there was a lot less options and knowledge out there. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have all the online stores. You kind of had to do with what came into your local hardware store or farm and machinery store every spring. You ordered your seeds mail order, and that was about it. Now we have the option for all kinds of things. So one of the first things I want you to do is, think about the space that you have and what it is that you want. Hey, Chris. One of the best things I can give for a small space garden is knowing that you can plant things like dwarfing fruit trees, okay, fruit and nut trees, or semi-dwarfing depending on your space. And you can grow apples, you can grow peaches, pears, pretty much anything as a dwarfing or semi-dwarfing tree. Now, depending on where you are, they might have slightly different terminology. You would want to do your research. But basically, you can have like a dwarfing apple tree as an example with, it only grows 2 or 3 feet high. You can have a great big container on your patio or your deck, and you can actually have your own fruit trees. You do not actually have to have a garden space. A semi-dwarfing is a somewhat bigger, it's not full size. I have full size trees. These things, I'm going to turn this around here. See, this is one of my apple trees, okay? I have a, 10 or 12 foot orchard ladder that I have to climb up to get into all my trees. These are full size. If you have the space for them, they're great for shade. There's all kinds of things that you can do with them over time as they grow, and it takes a few years. But a semi-dwarfing is going to be half this height. A semi-dwarfing is going to be like, maybe 5, 6, 7 feet tall. It's going to be easy to reach. You shouldn't need a step ladder. It'll depend some on how you keep it pruned. But in general, you can have fruit trees and nut trees that are going to last for years that will fit in the space that you have. I'm going to put a link after this below to a really great guy from the UK that is an absolute delight on teaching people all about different types of fruit trees and apple trees and things that you can grow. And some of the examples he has in his own yard of even creating things like stepovers. Okay, it's an education all in its own, and everybody should know that these sort of options are available. Now, the next thing is something that I've done for years, and I don't know if there's a real name for it, but I plant compactly. Meaning, now you can't do this with all types of crops. You can do this with things like, I find like your leafy greens, like your spinach and Swiss chard, your leaf lettuces, mesclun mixes, like your salad mixes, do very well with these things. Your Asian greens, if you have, like, I have taken like a 4 by 3 foot space and planted like 6 rows of these things, just a hand's breadth apart, okay, between the rows. And so I end up with like 40 feet of vegetables in a very compact space, because even though, for bigger spaces, okay, especially for irrigation or whatever it is you're doing, it's probably going to help to have it a little further apart. In a small space, it's easy to keep up with, and there's a couple things that happen here. I'm going to show you. I'm going to tip this here and show you. I have, in this very small space here, 4 rows. I have beet greens. I've got 2 different rows of kohlrabi, and I've got this Swiss chard. I'm hoping you can see this here. Now, Swiss chard, for example, is one of the ones I've discovered, even though it says on the planters, even though it says like on your instructions for planting, to make sure and plant them like, give them 6 inches of space. I don't. I take and I sprinkle the seeds when I'm planting through the rows really thickly. Okay, like we're talking like I just dump like an entire continuous line, and they come up as thick as I like them. Now I can, very often I'll go out and take and thin them out a little bit. And here's what happens with a smaller space, and this works with radishes, those little summer turnips, all those things. Plant them super, super thick. So when they come up, it's just this mass. And go out and thin them every couple of days. Those are microgreens, okay? You can get multiple crops out of a little 3-foot row before they ever come to maturity. And here's the other thing is things like your radishes and turnips and all that, beets, you can use the beet greens or all the greens. Like a lot of people don't realize this, like they just chop it off and throw them out, right? But they are really, really good to eat. They're really nutritious, and we're wasting, 2/3 of the crop by just eating, the radish. Now, it's a little iffy if you're getting them from the grocery store. They tend, the greens can be pretty beaten up by the time you get to them there, so it may not always be the greatest. But remember that, like if you're getting from the farmer's market or anything like that, those greens are all edible. They've got kind of a peppery sort of taste to them. Give them a wash, chop them up, put them in a stir fry, or add them to a soup or sandwich. Like there's so many things. Yeah, Chris, they're delicious. There's so many ways to use them, right? And you get multiple meals out of just one planting in one little space. Okay. Now the other thing is using what the British call cut and come again crops. Now this again applies to things like your spinach, your Swiss chard, your beet greens, your mesclun mixes. Take a look at your wherever it is you get your seeds from. They will have winter mesclun mixes. Head lettuces and things like that are great, but you know what? They take more space and they take longer to get a crop. Okay, now if you have the space and the time and you want to grow a couple, yes, those are what you would use succession planting. Plant a pod or whatever it is every couple of weeks with 2 or 3 of them, and you can have a succession of them. But things like your lettuces and all these other greens, a lot of your Asian greens as well, like your mustard greens. I'm going to be doing this later today with a bunch of my Swiss chard here. I'm going to take a pair of scissors and you just cut along the whole thing, cut them down to about 2 inches high, give it a good water, maybe a little bit of compost, and you know what? In a couple of weeks, all those leaves will have come back up and I will have more. And you should be able to do this multiple times. If you're planting in early spring or they're coming up before it gets too hot, they tend to bolt when it gets hotter, but if you plant again here, depending on where you are, but probably by middle of this month, you should have a good crop again here for fall, for the cooler weather, which they love, and you should get multiple cuttings out of that. This works in containers as well, if you're container gardening. Okay, so the next thing, of course, is containers. And even in the greenhouse and whatever, with all my tomato plants, I have containers fitted between the plants to make use of extra space. They're easy to move in and out as you're watering, or maybe it's too hot in there for something, they're easy to adjust. But the other thing is to use vertical options. So, strawberry planters, those ceramic strawberry planters you can get at the store with, that are tall with all the holes out the sides, they're a classic for a reason. And you don't have to just grow strawberries in them. I mean, you can grow herbs, you can grow lettuces, you can grow all your greens. Like you can, if you just have a little tiny space, have a couple of strawberry planters. You can have multiple different things growing out of them. And you'll have to figure out your watering and, where to place them with sun and heat and all that. But they're options. And the other thing too is, I mean, there's ways to grow vertically, and I'm not just talking about, climbing vegetables like for, putting up netting for your cucumbers or, whatever it is. I mean, that's important too. Um, but this is where Pinterest is your friend. You can go on there and look for small space garden options, decorating areas, and find, endless amounts of cute and kitschy ideas for, painting and, recycling an old ladder to stick in a corner of your garden and putting all your containers up it so that you have more vertical space, right? There's all kinds of options to grow up, okay, or up the side of a wall, or a space you already have. So let your imagination go a little bit and experiment with some different things, because you want to use that vertical real estate, right? Now, let me see what I'm missing here in my notes. Oh, the last one is, remembering that you can grow stuff inside, okay? Um, and by this, I specifically mean growing things like your own sprouts. It's coming up again because, I'm going to be putting out the late summer fall course on how to stock your pantry, stock your pantry workshop, because so many people are wanting to know how to be prepared for winter and things like that. Go down to your local health food store or order online. From so many places now have options for sprouting seeds, sprouting combos. Get some on your shelves. It's so easy to have a couple jars, and you just rinse them 2 or 3 times a day with cold water. You're not paying $4 for a little container that is goodness knows how fresh or not, from the grocery store, or they haven't got their truck in. And it's easy to add it to your smoothies and sandwiches and whatever else. There's so many ways to grow small, compact greens and things that you like, without it being super complicated. So leave me a comment below, and be sure to share this with anyone that needs it. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye for now.